need to talk into this, or is it just
it'll pick us up.
Cool.
So, all right, well, we are live from the AFCA for the Coaching Coordinator Podcast. We don't do a lot of these live, but I'm excited to be joined by Steve Hauser, who was with us all fall long with Teach Tapes. And Steve, it's great to actually be sitting down with you at the same place and talking ball.
Yeah, different setting, same good things. It's enjoyable, man. You talk about being a few minutes late to start on this. Just the people you bump into, the old faces. Doesn't matter the logos. It's just catching up and reconnecting.
Yeah, that's what's great about this event. Well, so let's catch up on some of what's been happening and what you've been seeing here. So a lot of great games, a lot of things that we talked about during the season coming up here through the bowl games, through the playoffs, all those kinds of things. So what's been on your mind? What have you seen here that has impressed you, that you found interesting, etc.?
More than anything, it all goes back to Todd Monken told me this like 10, 12 years ago at this point. Nothing matters till it matters. So you get these guys, and I was talking with a guy who was a DA at TCU last year, and now he's at New Mexico State. And hey, where those guys were at a year ago, and now they're playing in that game tomorrow. Like, man, you had a great season at New Mexico State. Good for you guys, but like, man, you could be playing in the Natty tomorrow. So it's like, it's amazing of how these different things, you never know where you're going to be a year from now. And seeing the people progress through this, that example, that guy played for us at Iowa State, and he was the L4, and now he's a big-time ball coach. So it's cool to see all this stuff.
So, looking back at these games, I think, the last time you and I talked, we did point to the future and some of the things we're going to do here with spring ball, but we didn't get a chance to talk about, any of the bowl games, any of the championships. What things from a Teach Tape side have stuck out for you?
More than anything, Keith, it's in a bowl game, it's like being in the first game of the year all over again, right? You give guys 4 weeks to figure things out, and even just the difference in what we've seen in the transfer portal of how that can impact a team going into things. And just make sure that, again, at the end of the day, you got to have your base. You guys got to trust it and let the players be confident. Because at the coaches are changing. I mean, you see Luke Fickell on the sideline wearing a Wisconsin shirt, and you're like, okay, how is this operation going? It's new for everybody. I mean, Oklahoma State, they're playing without the quarterback they played with all year. So there's things that are happening in the offseason that are still affecting those games.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we're looking at that now, seeing some of these changes, as you said, Luke Fickell being on the sideline with Wisconsin, some of the logos changing on popular coaches out there. It's still, in these new situations, going to come back to the fundamentals to the technique.
Yeah.
What are some of the things you've really put out there lately that again, from these games, from some of these changes have gotten your attention?
I think it's interesting, too, we talk about the coaching carousel, is the people that get to step up in this. Right, I was watching the Arkansas game, and they've got the linebacker coach up in the booth, and he's calling it. Obviously, Coach Odom going to UNLV. Later in the game, he's on the field. What a great opportunity for that guy to move. And I don't know him from a hole in the wall, right? But you see these different coaches that get to step up. And just like a player, the next man up philosophy in this profession, you never know where you're going to be one year from the other. So being able to have those experiences to fall back on. I was talking with a guy last night. The reason he got hired for a GA spot at the Power 5 level is because he ran a room at the Division III school, right? And the coach wanted to have someone who could do it and know that those guys are being taken care of. So I think just as much as the stuff that's coming up for the players in the bowl game, it's new opportunities for coaches. And you get to wear that bowl patch and, the family trip, and it's a unique experience. It's not like another road game.
Yeah, no, the bowl games are pretty cool. I know, my daughter didn't make the trip with the team orientation. She works with Mississippi State Creative, but she always gives me, she'll get some cool bowl gifts. So she gave me a football last year. I don't know what they got this year yet, so we'll see.
My mom's still using the iPad mini from about 8 years ago as a reader. So those make great in-house, NCAA, if you're listening to this, they make great in-house family Christmas presents.
Well, as you've been walking around here, I know, Teach Tapes, you're looking to expand the things that you do. Looking at some of the new technology out there, what things have gotten your attention?
It's eye-opening. I mean, even just the connections and, basically people helping people, right? I'm sitting here and I'm looking at Pro Quick Draw and I'm Go Army Edge and Coaching Coordinator. Like, it's great to see these people who are still connected with ball with whatever percentage they are and whatever niche they feel they can help people, right? And you walk around and you never know what's going to be around the corner. I mean, who's going to be coaching on that field over there? And, it's the same thing with the conversations, but the technology, the access, it's changed everything for the better because so many people can contribute in different ways. There's guys at Iowa State that I bumped into the equipment managers, and their building is totally different than when I was there 2 years ago. So what they can do in these booths, they're here trying to get better too.
Yeah, I think that's the interesting part. There's so much stuff around here. As a coach, if you have any budget at all, your head could be spinning, like what am I getting next? But I think, it's interesting to find the things that have me most interested are things you can connect all the way back to what kind of experience are you going to create for the player, right? Because that's what this is about anyway, right? I mean, it's cool seeing all the new uniforms, logos and stuff, but thinking especially from the things we can do as coaches that are going to affect the players on the field. I think that stuff certainly has me interested. We're sitting here in the Catapult booth. We've talked quite a bit about Catapult, throughout the season. We brought up a lot of things and, the data that it gives you, et cetera, to help your players.
And it fine-tunes your coaching, right? You got to be aware of, hey, these guys only got so much go in them. And when do you want it? How do you build that? And it lets you work smarter, not harder. And one of the things, too, going through this is making sure that I can provide from Teach Tapes the best experience for the guys in this building because they have a lot of options, right? What you said it earlier, what are you taking back for your players? What from this weekend? Yes, there's a social side. Yes, there's a professional development side, but what can you put your hands on and make sure that in spring ball, there's guys who are doing spring ball at the beginning of February. Yeah. There's guys from the West Coast that couldn't make the trip that I'm getting texts of like, hey, man, we had OVs for transfers. I finally got 2 days with my family, and now I'm also getting ready for spring. Like, that calendar doesn't stop.
No.
So hey, I've told people before, you're either doing something about it or you're just complaining, right? So you got to understand what's out there, but also what can you bring, and this is a little self-serving from the Teach Tape side of touching it, seeing it. What's going to connect to a player? They're on their phone all the dang time, right? You got to make sure they've got examples that they can see and be like, gotcha, that's what you need, right?
Yeah.
Now, hey, all this other noise, that's awesome. Let's go see it and do it from people we expect.
Yeah, that's what I love about it. And, we live in that, minute to 2 minute at a time world. So those things work really well in teaching our players. And I don't care what level you're at, guys always aspire to be the best out there. So when you're showing them examples of some of the best coaches coaching a player, some of the best players executing a certain technique, that means a lot. That gives them something to grasp onto.
And there's 2 ways to take this. I've heard some coaches say coaching is saying the same thing 10,000 different ways because you never know how it's going to hit somebody.
Right.
But it's also about making sure that, hey, Eric Henderson was a defensive GA with us at Oklahoma State back in the day. When he done it at Georgia Military, Georgia Tech, the NFL, well, now he's a D-line coach for Aaron Donald, right? So you're seeing this guy who's still the exact – he's got his dog work going with those guys, and they love the passion that he brings. Well, guys, what's different than Eli Rashid doing at Iowa State? And he's got his chain gang, CGA, like that brotherhood mentality of looking out for the guy next to you and building those guys up. Be like, hey, here's the example. Here's Aaron Donald doing a simple drill of defeating hands, getting lateral agility, and then we're run, reaching around to finish the drill. You can see that as a redshirt freshman, be like, okay, to quote another guy that may hear this, and I'll send it to him, but same, but different, right? How many times do you see versions of the same thing, but with a little tweak? You talk about the bowl stuff, what's going on. Even the snap through the legs of the quarterback under center. Like, it came up at Texas Tech, I think, the next week, right? Once that comes out in those early games, we saw the little snow globe thing from the Chiefs last night. Tell me that's not going to be working its way through the new Philly special, right? I mean, and everyone's got their workaround, but it's just exciting when people have different ideas and everyone else can put their fingertips on it.
Yeah, that was definitely an interesting one, but I thought about it. It goes back to the different ways the huddle has been done and used over time. We talked about the quick huddle. Yeah.
Well, and
all that shift. Yeah,
you're tapping and going.
Yeah.
So my guy's Robbie Disher. He's at Tulane. Shout out Green Wave. But he was at Louisiana with Coach Napier, and obviously they do an excellent job. Had a lot of success on special teams with Matt Powledge, Chris Couch, who's at Florida. Obviously, Powledge at Baylor now as a DC. Like, it's awesome to see these guys rise from that side of it and take over a side of the ball. But Dish and Coach Napier, so we're playing them first game of the year at Iowa State, and they're running the Alabama kickoff, and they got different guys doing different things. You got to know who's doing what. They got their backs turned to the booth with their hands on their collar of their shoulder pad, so I can't see the numbers up in the booth. So if I know 25 does this and 18 does that, well, I can't see the small number on the side, and the only guy I get to see is the one banked right here. So I can see 1 out of the 9 numbers. Kicker takes his steps, they blow it in. Whoop, whoop. So I can't get the numbers. I'm trying to tell the kids, and it takes multiple reps.
Yeah.
But that's the same as the snow globe.
Right.
It's how do you delay that tactic to get to what you want?
Is that the official name now, the snow
I
globe?
saw it on Twitter. Who knows? That could be someone I'm giving a little too much shine to, but it's funny how things stick.
Yeah, definitely. Well, sitting here in the Catapult booth, and I mentioned, multiple times through our Teach Tape series during the season, we did talk about Catapult. You shared a story about, being the guy in the room when that data came out that everybody was staring at you.
You better be aware.
What the heck are you doing?
There's no excuses, right? So, and I think as a coach, what's awesome is your library of drills. Everyone's got, their interview manual, awesome. Shout out you. I don't know how many people are actually looking at it. Maybe I'm wrong, but there's a lot of work that goes into that stuff. The biggest thing is being able to dial up the intensity, but also dial down the intensity of those drills.
Yeah.
Right? You see the clips on Teach Tapes of the Carolina Panthers. They're in a 4-point stance with a crash pad, a hand shield in front of them, and they're linemen come out of their shoes and fall onto the crash pad. Hey, this is goal line. We got QB sneak, 4th and 1. How are we working that explosion? Well, that's the most minimal impact thing they could be doing, but how are you still training a high intensity situation? So things like Catapult lets you know where you're at and make sure you can train the best way.
And when you look now at this, Catapult 1, this going all the way down to the high school level, it may be needed even more there, because when you look at, NFL or the big colleges, there's some control over what's going on with player nutrition, rest, those kinds of things. Certainly the data means a lot there. But, you think about a situation like high school, when these kids leave you don't know what they're putting in their bodies, you don't know what their homes are like, rest, etc. Those environments are less controlled, and now when you can start to see, again, what do these guys have in the tank? What do we need to do today, especially over the course of the season? I think it can help you great.
Well, and we said earlier, it comes down to people. And you talk about high school. My dad was a high school coach. I went home for the holidays and saw my old high school coach, who's now the head coach. And these people care. There's so much care and time. These guys are making 50 cents an hour for what they put in.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And some people are fortunate where that can be the full-time part, but it's full-time care all the time. That heart, that investment, and there's less numbers. You're talking about what a coaching staff is at college or pro versus the number of players. You got more numbers at high school with more diverse situations that you're dealing with. You better have that TLC to match the technology to make sure, hey, how are we serving these guys the right way?
Yeah. It's something, it was up on Twitter today, and it's in the basketball world, a small college, and there seems to be a lot to the story, but long story short, these players had a grueling practice. Sounds like there was a little bit of a discipline issue too, but hospitalized players with rhabdo, right? And it made me think back to my son's senior year, first game. One of their players in the game, he's having a phenomenal game, goes down in the hospital for a few days with rhabdo. Those are things now that can be prevented. We can start to see what's going on, things that, we know how we're working our players, we can get a feel for those things. Now when we can actually see what's going on with those guys because of wearables, I think, it's almost like you have to be looking at, how do I get this in my program?
And at the end of the day, you can always say, hey, we got to finish, we got to power through, 4th and 1 for the national championship,
Sure.
That mentality, but you got to work smart. There's too many, you look at all these booths, you see the people that put so much time in to get down here and do things the right way. How do you make sure it's not coach speak and it's not something that we were told 30 years ago? There's a lot of ways to do things better. We're seeing that in all aspects of life.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you want to make sure the kids that you're taking care of the end of the day, someone dropped their kid off at your school. How do you make sure that, hey, there's a line between attitude and effort and real life? Because everybody saw Damar Hamlin, and I don't care what you were doing the rest of that day, you couldn't really focus on what you were doing. Because how many people, and you talk with guys out here of like, if anyone's ever been exposed to one of those life-changing situations, hey, whatever it is, no one wants to see it, but it stays with you forever.
Yeah.
You can firmly go back to that moment in time like no one wants to see that stuff happen.
No. And it's happened way too many times over the course of this game and history of the game. What happened to Damar, free. You just don't get hit in the heart like that. That's tough to avoid, but there's so many stories. It seems like every summer you'll find one now where, a kid drops on the field. That's the stuff that like I would hate to be on the coach on that side of it, having to live that, especially now that there is the opportunity to see into what's going on with our players.
I would say this too, like we talk about the technology, the connection between the strength staff and the coaches, I think, is stronger than ever. Yeah. Right? So that side is being recognized of who are the first guys that coach is hiring. Hey, the guys running the recruiting, right? General manager, DPP, and the strength coach, right? Because now you're able to have that connection and make sure it's all aligned, right? That's the big word. Hey, coaching help, business help, development. Hey, let's make sure we're all aligned. But you have buy-in across the board. When people can see it and they understand it, you can make sure that the whole staff is working the right way. So I believe that intent is there. The want to is there. It's just to make sure the access is correct.
Yeah, absolutely. I do see, and I've had actually a guy sitting right over there at the Rydell booth, Richie Gray, who's been on the podcast before, has talked about, one problem is coaching is everybody was siloed in their own little deal and not interconnecting. And, I do see those walls being broken down, so there's better communication. Guys are working together. And again, it goes back to what I said before. And going around here looking at all the cool stuff. All this goes back to the player, right? It's about the player and has to be.
And I think what's really cool, too, is I'm not the youngest guy in the room anymore. You always felt like you were when you came in here. There's so many players that are coming into coaching, and they get it. They felt it. They're not that far removed, right? You're seeing guys be promoted full-time faster and faster. So that connection. I mean, let's be honest. Every school is a junior college right now. You're recruiting to bring guys in. You're recruiting and building relationships to make sure you can retain the development that you're putting in. So I think that want to of seeing yourself as a coach in the player, I think is stronger than ever right now.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Steve, it's been great to sit down here and actually look at each other face to face. Don't get to do that when we talk. I'm excited about what we have coming up with Teach Tapes in the spring, in more to the Teach Tapes series. I'm certainly excited about all the things you're doing as well to grow Teach Tapes and do more for coaches and be a positive effect on the game.
Thank you. That last part is huge, Keith, because you walk around this place and every year you're reminded how few people you actually know.
Yeah.
Right? You think your circle's pretty big, and there's a lot of good people doing good things, so it's always great to learn. So thanks for the time, Keith.
Definitely.
Big time, man. Cool. That was good.